Hey everyone, welcome back to Speak Up. It's really good to have you with us today. Whether this is your first time listening or you've been following our episodes for a while, thank you for joining us. Here on Speak Up, we talk about real topics in simple English. We want to help you practice your listening, build your vocabulary, and understand the world better. So feel free to relax, grab a notebook if you want, and just enjoy learning something new. Today's episode is a bit different because it's not about daily life or personal tips. It's about something very serious that's happening right now in the world. A conflict between two powerful countries, Iran and Israel.
Yes, and it's not just any news story, it's something that could affect many people across the world. If you've heard words like missiles, nuclear program, or airstrikes in the news lately, it might be about what's going on between Iran and Israel. We know this topic can feel complicated, but don't worry, we're here to make it simple. We'll explain everything step by step in easy English so you can learn about it and also improve your language skills at the same time. And remember, understanding global news is a great way to boost your English fluency because you hear real words, real phrases, and real situations.
That's right. And we'll keep things very clear. We'll explain who these countries are, why they don't get along, what's actually happening right now, and what might happen next. And as always, we'll use slow, simple English. So even if you're just starting your English journey, you'll be able to follow along. We also won't use difficult vocabulary without explaining it. So by the end of this episode, you'll not only understand the Iran-Israel conflict better, but you'll also have improved your English vocabulary and listening skills. And who knows, maybe next time you hear something on the news, you'll understand it with more confidence.
Exactly. So if you're ready, let's begin. We'll start by talking about where these countries are and what kind of relationship they've had in the past. Then we'll move into what's happening today, what actions each country has taken, what they're saying to each other, and how the world is reacting. Stay with us until the end because everything connects step by step. And remember, it's okay if you don't understand every single word. Just listen, follow along, and focus on the main ideas. This is your space to grow and learn. Let's begin.
Let's first understand the places involved. Iran and Israel are two countries in the Middle East. That's the area between Europe and Asia, where many different cultures and histories come together. Iran is a large country with mountains, deserts, and busy cities. Its capital is Tehran. It has a long history, and today it has a strong military and a government that controls many things. People in Iran mostly speak Persian, and the country is known for its oil, gas, and cultural heritage. It's also one of the most powerful countries in the region when it comes to influence.
Now, let's talk about Israel. Israel is much smaller than Iran, both in land and population. But it's a very advanced country, especially in science, military, and technology. Its capital is Jerusalem, and people speak Hebrew there. Israel is located near the Mediterranean Sea, and it shares borders with countries like Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. Even though it's small, Israel is considered one of the most powerful countries in the Middle East because of its strong defense systems and international partnerships.
Iran and Israel are not next to each other, but they are close in the region. There are other countries between them, like Iraq and Jordan. So they don't share a border, but they are still involved in the same regional matters. That's why they often get involved in each other's affairs. You could say they are rivals from a distance. Even though they don't fight directly every day, there is always some kind of tension between them. It's not just about location, it's also about ideas, power, and control.
And because they are far apart, they don't usually fight on the ground like neighbors. Instead, they use other ways, like launching attacks through the air or using cyber tools. Sometimes they even support groups in other countries that fight against each other. So even though Iran and Israel are not side by side, they still find ways to challenge one another. That's one reason the relationship is always full of pressure. It's like a long, cold fight that sometimes becomes very hot.
Iran is known for being one of the biggest countries in the region. It has a lot of oil and gas, and it has good relations with countries that also don't get along with Israel. That gives it more power. Iran also spends a lot of money on weapons and defense. Its leaders often speak strongly against Israel in public speeches. This creates more tension, and it makes it harder for the two countries to understand each other or talk peacefully.
On the other hand, Israel has one of the most advanced defense systems in the world. It can detect and stop missiles in the air before they hit the ground. Israel also has strong support from powerful countries like the United States. That support gives Israel more confidence, but it also adds to the tension. Iran doesn't like how close Israel is with the West. So this mix of military power, strong opinions, and outside support makes the relationship between the two countries even more complicated.
So we have two very different countries. One is big and rich in natural resources. The other is small but advanced in technology and defense. They don't live next to each other, but they are close enough to be involved in each other's issues. And because both are strong in different ways, they always seem to be watching each other, ready to respond when something happens. That's why understanding where they are and what they represent is an important first step.
Yes, and once you see that clearly, everything else starts to make more sense. It's not just about land or distance. It's about beliefs, politics, and how much power each country wants to have in the region. And when two strong countries don't trust each other, it often leads to conflict, even if they don't share a border. These are the basics, and they help us understand the bigger picture.
Now let's talk about why Iran and Israel don't like each other. One of the biggest reasons is that Iran does not recognize Israel as a country. That means Iran's leaders believe Israel should not exist as a separate nation. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran's government has taken a strong position against Israel. They see Israel as a symbol of Western control in the Middle East. Iran's leaders often say that Israel is not a legal country, and they call for its removal. This belief creates a deep wall between the two nations. It's not just a political disagreement, it's a complete rejection of the other side's right to exist.
Yes, and because of that belief, Iran also supports groups that are against Israel. These groups include Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Both of these groups have fought with Israel many times. Iran gives them money, weapons, and training. Iran says it supports these groups because they're fighting to free Palestine, but Israel sees it very differently. From Israel's point of view, these groups are terrorist organizations, and if Iran is helping them, then Iran becomes a direct threat. This is one reason why the relationship is so tense. It's not just words, it's real support for groups that attack Israel.
Israel, on the other hand, sees Iran as one of its biggest threats. Israeli leaders believe Iran wants to become the most powerful country in the Middle East, and that would be dangerous for them. Iran's support for armed groups, its missile programs, and its nuclear activities all worry Israel. Israeli leaders often say that if Iran gets stronger, the entire region could become unstable. And because of this fear, Israel tries to stop Iran's plans, sometimes with airstrikes, sometimes through secret missions. For Israel, it's not just politics. It's about safety and survival.
And this fight is not really about land. Iran and Israel don't share a border, and they don't fight over the same piece of land like some other countries do. This conflict is about power, religion, and politics. Iran is mostly a Shia Muslim country with a government based on religion. Israel is a Jewish state with a very different system. Their beliefs, their goals, and their allies are all very different. Iran often speaks against the West, especially the United States, while Israel works closely with the West. These opposite sides create even more distance between them, making peace very difficult.
Another important thing to understand is how both countries use strong words in public. Iran's leaders often say that Israel should be destroyed. These kinds of statements are shocking, and they make the situation worse. Israel replies with warnings and sometimes with direct action. Over time, this cycle of threats and responses becomes normal between the two. Even when things are quiet, there's always tension. And for people living in the region, this means living under constant worry.
That's why both sides always stay alert, because they don't trust each other at all.
Yes, and when there's no trust, even small problems can turn into something much bigger. A small statement, a secret mission, or a single missile test can start a big reaction. That's how the relationship between Iran and Israel works. They are not officially at war, but they are never truly at peace either. It's like walking on thin ice. Anything can break the silence. And because both sides feel that they're defending themselves, they believe their actions are right. That's why the situation keeps going in circles without a real solution.
So when we ask, why don't they like each other? The answer is not simple. It's not just one reason, it's many reasons. It's history, it's religion, it's fear, and it's politics. And when two countries have deep differences like these, it's hard to fix things. That's why this conflict has lasted for so many years. They don't fight every day, but the anger is always there, just below the surface. And that makes every new event feel like it could be the beginning of something bigger.
And when two powerful countries keep pushing against each other, the danger grows not just for them, but for everyone around them. Other countries start to take sides, the media starts reporting every small move, people begin to worry about what might happen next. So this isn't just a local fight, it's a situation the whole world watches. And that's why understanding this background is important. It helps you see the full picture in simple, clear terms. You don't need to be a political expert. You just need the facts, one step at a time.
One of the biggest reasons behind the tension between Iran and Israel is Iran's nuclear program. Iran says it is building nuclear energy for peaceful use, for things like electricity and medical treatment. And under international law, countries are allowed to use nuclear energy in this way. But many other countries, especially Israel and the United States, don't fully believe that. They are worried that Iran is not telling the whole truth. They think Iran might also be trying to secretly build a nuclear weapon, a bomb that could cause massive destruction. This fear has been growing for many years now.
Yes, and this fear is very serious for Israel. Israel believes that if Iran ever gets a nuclear bomb, it could use that weapon against them, or even just threaten to use it. That alone would change everything. Right now, Israel is one of the strongest countries in the region, but if Iran becomes a nuclear power, it could change the balance completely. That's why Israel sees Iran's nuclear program as a direct threat, not just something to watch, but something they must stop. From Israel's point of view, it's not safe to wait and see. They feel like they must act before it's too late.
Because of this fear, Israel has taken action many times. They've launched cyber attacks on Iran's nuclear systems. They've sent drones to spy on Iran's nuclear sites. And they've also been accused of attacking Iranian scientists who were working on nuclear projects. These are not small things. They're serious steps. But Israel says they have no choice. They believe they are stopping something much worse from happening in the future. For them, it's like stopping a fire before it starts. Even if it means taking bold steps now, they think it's better than facing a nuclear Iran later.
Iran, on the other hand, strongly denies these accusations. They say they are not building any nuclear weapons at all. Iran says its nuclear program is legal, peaceful, and fully controlled by international rules. They also say that Israel is trying to make Iran look bad on the world stage. Because of this, Iran feels angry and targeted. They say, why can some countries have nuclear weapons, but we can't even use nuclear energy for peaceful reasons? So this isn't just a technical issue, it's also about trust, fairness, and power. And when both sides feel like they are right, it becomes even harder to solve.
Another important point is how other countries react to all this. The United Nations has tried to keep Iran's nuclear program under watch. In the past, there was a deal between Iran and several big countries. The deal said Iran would slow down its nuclear work, and in return, the other countries would remove economic sanctions. But that deal didn't last. After a few years, it broke down. Since then, Iran has started doing more nuclear work again. And other countries, especially Israel,
are watching closely. Every small move now becomes a big deal because the trust is already broken.
That's why this nuclear issue is so dangerous. It's not just about science or technology, it's about fear. It's about what might happen if something goes wrong. A misunderstanding, a secret move, or a late reaction could lead to a major conflict. That's why this issue keeps coming up in the news. And that's also why Israel keeps attacking or warning Iran whenever they feel the nuclear program is getting too advanced. To them, stopping it is not a choice. It's something they believe they must do to protect their country.
So when we talk about the conflict between Iran and Israel, the nuclear issue is right at the center. It's not the only reason they don't get along, but it's one of the most serious. A nuclear weapon is not like a regular weapon. It has the power to destroy entire cities. And once one country in the region gets it, others might want to follow. That's why many countries, not just Israel, are trying to stop it. But again, because there's so little trust between Iran and the West, it's very hard to control or limit what's happening.
And for people like us who are learning about world news in simple English, it's important to understand both sides. We don't have to agree with either country, but we should know why they feel what they feel. Iran wants to grow its power and protect itself. Israel wants to stay safe and stop threats before they get too big. These are powerful goals, and when they crash into each other, it creates serious conflict. This is why the nuclear program continues to be one of the most dangerous parts of their relationship.
Now we have understood the background, where these countries are, and why they don't get along. So let's talk about what's happening right now. In June 2025, something very serious happened. Israel carried out direct attacks on nuclear sites inside Iran. These were not small attacks. These were strong military airstrikes planned carefully and done at night. The cities that were hit included Tehran, the capital of Iran, as well as Arak and Isfahan, all known for having nuclear facilities. Israel said these places were building dangerous weapons, possibly nuclear bombs, and that action was necessary to stop it.
This was a big move, and it shocked many people. Attacking nuclear sites is not an ordinary military step. It means Israel is not just warning Iran anymore. It's taking action. These airstrikes destroyed buildings and damaged systems that Iran had spent years developing. And naturally, Iran was very angry. Its government immediately responded with strong words saying that this was a direct act of war. They also promised to hit back soon. People in Iran were worried. Many were scared, especially in the cities that were attacked. The fear of a bigger war started growing quickly after that night.
Israel, on the other hand, said it had no choice. Israeli officials explained that they had intelligence showing that Iran was very close to building weapons that could change the balance of power. They said waiting longer would be too risky. Israel also claimed that the attack was targeted, meaning they tried not to hurt civilians. But even with that explanation, the world reacted strongly. Some countries supported Israel's decision, while others warned that this could start a much bigger conflict in the region. The media around the world started focusing on the Middle East once again.
And right after the attack, Iran began preparing its own response. Military units were put on high alert. There were videos showing soldiers getting ready and speeches by Iranian leaders saying they would not remain silent. Iran called the attack a violation of their rights and said that Israel would face real consequences. This type of language is very serious in global politics. It usually means some kind of military action is coming soon. People in both countries began to feel even more anxious. Many families were afraid of what could happen next, especially those living near possible targets.
Within a few days, Iran launched missiles and drones toward Israel. These were not warning shots. They were real attacks meant to cause damage. Over 150 missiles and drones were sent from different parts of Iran. Most were aimed at military areas, but sadly, one of the missiles hit a hospital in the Israeli city of Beersheba. That was a shocking moment. Hospitals aren't military targets.
They're places where people go to heal. When the news came out that a hospital was hit and many people were injured, the situation became even more serious and emotional for everyone.
Yes, the hospital attack brought a lot of international attention. World leaders started speaking up. Some asked both countries to stop and talk. Others blamed Iran for targeting a civilian place. Iran, however, said it was not on purpose. They said they were only aiming at military spots and that the hospital was hit by mistake. But in war, mistakes still cause real pain. Many people were injured and some were in serious condition. After this event, things felt more out of control. It was no longer just about military bases or secret programs. It was affecting real people in public places.
So now, both countries had crossed a line. Israel attacked Iran's nuclear sites, and Iran responded with heavy missile fire. It wasn't just words or warnings anymore. It had turned into real attacks, real injuries, and a real sense of danger. Every news channel in the world was talking about it. International groups like the United Nations started making statements, and people in the Middle East began wondering, what's going to happen next? Will this keep growing, or will someone step in to stop it? No one really knows, but the fear was spreading fast.
In the middle of all this, people are just trying to live. Students, teachers, families, shop owners, they all want peace. But when two governments fight like this, it's always the normal people who suffer the most. Power struggles between nations can lead to destroyed homes, closed schools, and a future full of fear. So yes, what happened recently was more than just an attack. It was a signal that things had reached a dangerous level, and in such moments, even small actions can have very big effects.
After Israel's airstrikes on Iran's nuclear sites, Iran gave a very strong and clear answer. They didn't just speak in anger, they acted. Iran launched over 150 missiles and drones toward different parts of Israel. These attacks happened over several hours, and they came from multiple directions. Some missiles were fired from inside Iran. Others were launched by groups in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, places where Iran has strong influence. This wasn't just one missile or one drone. It was a large planned operation, and it sent a loud message. Iran was not going to stay silent.
These missile attacks were very serious. Most of them were aimed at military bases and defense sites inside Israel, but not all of them were stopped. One of the worst moments came when a missile hit a hospital in the southern city of Beersheba. That's a place where doctors and nurses help people heal. The explosion injured many people, including patients, staff, and even some children. It was a heartbreaking scene. Hospitals are not part of war zones. They are protected places, and when one is hit, it causes pain far beyond the battlefield. The world quickly took notice.
Israel's defense system, called the Iron Dome, was able to stop many of the incoming missiles, but even with such strong protection, some missiles made it through. The hospital attack became one of the most talked about events in the news. It shocked people across the world, not just in Israel or Iran. News channels, world leaders, and regular people on social media were all talking about it. Many said that war had gone too far. When weapons hit hospitals, schools, or homes, it shows that the situation is no longer just about governments. It begins to affect innocent lives directly.
Iran later said that the hospital was not their target. They claimed they were only aiming at military locations. They said the missile may have gone off course or there was a mistake in the system. That can happen in modern warfare, but it doesn't take away the pain. A mistake still hurts people. A mistake still leaves families in shock. Whether it was on purpose or not, the result was real. People were injured, buildings were damaged, and fear spread even more among those living in Israel. People started staying home, canceling events, and preparing for more attacks.
Inside Iran, the government called the missile operation a success. They said it was a fair response to Israel's airstrikes. Many people in Iran supported the decision. On the streets, there were large gatherings, with some people celebrating the attacks. But at the same time, there were also people who were scared, worried that Israel might now respond with even more force. That's how fast things change in a conflict like this. One action leads to another, and each step increases the risk of a larger war. Even people far away from the missiles start to feel the fear.
And of course, around the world, many countries were watching. Some governments called for calm. Others blamed Iran. A few said Israel caused this by attacking first. The opinions were different, but one thing was clear. People were nervous. The situation was growing too fast, from quiet tensions to full missile attacks in just a few days. And when things move that quickly, mistakes are more likely. Fear spreads, and decisions are made with emotion instead of logic. That's when real danger begins, not just between two countries, but for the whole region.
For the people living in Israel, this attack was a reminder that they are always at risk. Sirens rang through the night, families ran to bomb shelters. Hospitals were full, not just with the injured, but also with people feeling afraid and anxious. Even children began asking questions like, will the next missile hit our house? This is what war feels like for those who have nothing to do with politics. For them, it's not about power or defense, it's about staying alive. And every time missiles fly, more people are pulled into a life of fear and uncertainty.
And sadly, that's how many people across the region are living now. Between the missiles, the warnings, the explosions, and the news updates, it's hard to feel safe. Whether in Israel or in parts of Iran, life has changed. Simple things like going to school or visiting the market suddenly feel dangerous. People are checking the sky more than the clock. And when that becomes normal, it's a sign that things have gone too far. These missile attacks were not just a military event. They were a clear sign that peace is slipping away and fear is growing stronger every day.
After Iran launched its missiles and drones, Israel responded strongly, and not just with weapons, but also with words. One of Israel's top leaders made a very serious statement. He called Iran's supreme leader a modern-day Hitler. That's a powerful and painful comparison. It means Israel sees him as a dangerous person who should not be trusted or allowed to lead. Israeli leaders said that just like the world once stopped Hitler, they now must stop Iran's leader. They said he's pushing the world toward war, and if no one acts, many more people could suffer.
Those words shocked many people, not just in Iran, but around the world. Comparing anyone to Hitler is not something leaders say easily. It shows that Israel sees this situation as extremely dangerous. After those statements, Israel also began launching more military attacks on Iran. This time, they didn't only target nuclear sites, they also bombed military bases, radar systems, and areas where missiles might be stored. These airstrikes happened in different cities across Iran. Israel said these were places used for planning attacks, and they had to be destroyed before more missiles were fired.
These new airstrikes were fast and intense. Within just a few days, Israel had hit multiple targets in cities like Mashhad, Yazd, and Shiraz. Many of the attacks happened at night, using fighter jets and drones. Israel said this was part of a bigger plan to weaken Iran's military power. They called it a defensive operation, meaning they believe it's a way to protect themselves. But in Iran, people saw it differently. The government said these were acts of aggression. They called the strikes illegal and said Israel was trying to start a full war.
And once again, it was the people who suffered the most. In some areas, buildings were destroyed, power lines were cut, hospitals became too full. Some families had to leave their homes and move to safer areas. Even if the targets were military, the damage reached the public. Life became harder overnight. There were food shortages in some cities, and public transport stopped in many places. For ordinary people, every bombing meant more fear, more confusion, and more pain. Some had no idea why they were being affected. They just wanted peace and safety.
Israel also gave more warnings after these attacks. Their leaders said they would continue bombing any place in Iran that seemed like a threat.
They warned that if Iran fires more missiles, Israel will strike even harder. This kind of message makes it clear Israel is not going to wait. They're taking action first, and they want the world to know they're serious. But this also increases tension. When one side keeps attacking and the other side keeps responding, there's little room left for peace talks. The situation becomes a cycle. Attack, reply, attack again.
And during all this, many countries began to worry. World leaders started calling for calm. They said the fighting must stop before it turns into a bigger war. But Israel didn't slow down. They said that as long as Iran's leaders stay in power and support violence, Israel must act. They also asked their own people to prepare for more emergency situations. Schools stayed closed in some areas. Army units stayed on alert, and air raid sirens became part of daily life. It showed that Israel was getting ready for anything and not expecting peace anytime soon.
This moment is very serious for both countries. For Israel, these strikes are about survival. They believe if they don't act now, they will be attacked again soon. They feel like this is not just a choice, it's something they have to do to protect their future. But with every strike, the risk of a bigger war grows. More weapons, more damage, and more anger on both sides. And when things reach this level, it becomes very hard to stop. One wrong step, and things could go out of control fast.
And sadly, the people who have no power over these decisions are the ones suffering the most. They are the ones hearing the bombs, hiding in shelters, losing their homes, and feeling fear in every part of their lives. The leaders keep talking and fighting, but the public is just trying to stay safe. Israel's response was strong, and it sent a message, but that message came with a price. Now, millions of people in both countries are living with fear and waiting to see what happens next.
Now let's talk about something that's not always seen in the news: secret operations. Before the recent airstrikes, Israel did something very planned and quiet. They used Mossad, which is Israel's top spy agency. Mossad is known around the world for doing high-level secret missions. This time, Israeli agents worked inside Iran, without anyone knowing. They collected information, watched Iran's military movements, and prepared the way for the attacks. These agents helped find the exact locations of missile launchers, radar systems, and storage areas. It was like opening a door from the inside before the airstrikes came from the sky.
And along with spy agents, Israel also used drones. These are small flying machines without pilots. They are often used for watching and attacking targets. Some of these drones were sent into Iran days before the official airstrikes began. They flew low, quiet, and fast. Their job was to damage Iran's missile launchers early, before Iran could use them. By doing this, Israel made it harder for Iran to respond right away. It's a smart but dangerous move. Using drones like this shows how modern warfare works today. You don't always need soldiers on the ground. Machines can now do much of the spying and even some of the fighting.
This kind of secret action is called a covert operation. The word covert means hidden or not done in public. Covert operations are planned in silence. No one talks about them while they're happening. Sometimes even the people inside the country don't know they're being watched or attacked. That's what happened here. Iran didn't realize that drones and spies were already moving around inside the country. By the time they understood, the damage was already done. Israel had already prepared the battlefield in secret before anyone saw planes or bombs in the air.
And when these kinds of operations are successful, they give a big advantage. Israel's drones damage some of Iran's important systems quietly. So when the main airstrikes happened, Iran couldn't respond as fast or as strong as it wanted to. Some of their missile systems were already broken, and some of their radars were not working. That's what covert missions do. They make the other side weaker without open fighting. But at the same time, they create more anger. Iran felt shocked and embarrassed. They said their land had been invaded in secret and that Israel had crossed a red line.
These operations are not new. Mossad has done similar things before. In past years, Israeli agents have been accused of killing Iranian scientists, stealing secret documents, and even setting fire to nuclear labs. Israel usually does not talk about these missions officially. They never say yes or no. But experts believe these operations are a big part of Israel's strategy. Instead of just fighting openly, they mix in quiet, careful moves that happen in the shadows. That's how they stay one step ahead, at least in their own view.
For Iran, these actions are serious violations. They say no country should secretly send drones or agents into another country. Iran's leaders say it's not just spying, it's an attack. And when it's done secretly, it's even more dangerous. Iran's military now says they are increasing their security. They're looking harder for spies, watching the skies for drones, and checking every system. But it's hard to stop something you can't see. And that's the scary part. Secret missions like this don't just damage machines, they also damage trust. They make people feel unsafe, even when everything seems calm.
These secret operations are also hard to prove. Many times countries know something happened, but they don't always have clear evidence. That's why stories about Mossad or other spy work often come from journalists or leaked reports, not from official sources. But in this case, the damage was real. Iran's military systems were clearly hit before the big attacks. That's why many experts believe drones and spies were involved. And it also explains how Israel was able to strike with such accuracy. It wasn't luck. It was preparation done in secret.
And once this kind of war starts, one that includes both open attacks and hidden actions, it becomes even more complex. Countries start to look everywhere for threats in the sky, on the ground, and even in their own offices. People start to worry. Who's watching us? Who's sending the drones? It's not just about bombs and missiles anymore. It's about trust, fear, and what might happen when no one is looking. That's why these secret missions are powerful. They may be quiet, but their effects are very loud.
Let's now look at what other countries are doing. One of the biggest players in this conflict is the United States. The US has always been a strong supporter of Israel. They give Israel military help, technology, and political support in global meetings. After the recent attacks, the US said it supports Israel's right to defend itself. But at the same time, American leaders don't want a full war to start. They're trying to stop things from going too far. The US is in a difficult position, supporting one side, but also asking for calm. It's like walking on a very thin line.
Yes, and American officials have spoken directly to both Israel and Iran through backdoor talks. That means the talks are happening quietly, not in public. The U.S. is asking Israel to stop more attacks and asking Iran not to respond with more missiles. They say that if both countries keep fighting, it could pull the whole region into a big war. The U.S. also worries about its own soldiers in nearby places like Iraq and Syria. If the war grows, American forces could be in danger too. So the U.S. wants to support Israel, but not at the cost of a bigger conflict.
At the same time, other world powers are also speaking out. Countries like China, Germany, and France are calling for peace talks. They say this war is not helping anyone. Chinese leaders have offered to help both sides sit down and talk. European leaders are also asking for a ceasefire, a break in fighting, so innocent people can be safe. These countries don't have the same close relationship with Israel like the US does. That's why they believe they can be neutral and help both sides listen. But so far, no official talks have started.
And then there's the United Nations, also known as the UN. This is a group made up of almost every country in the world. The UN has asked both Israel and Iran to stop fighting. They are calling for peace and saying that civilian lives must be protected. Some UN leaders say that both countries are making the situation worse. They're warning that if this continues, there could be more damage, more refugees, and more tension across the Middle East. The UN can't force countries to stop, but they can try to bring world attention to the danger.
The problem is that even though many countries are calling for peace, their voices are not always strong enough. Iran and Israel both believe they're right, and that makes it hard to listen to outside advice. Each country thinks it's just protecting itself. So even when world leaders speak, the fighting continues. The US has sent some military ships closer to Israel, just in case things get worse. China has warned about global instability, and many countries are now preparing for the impact of war, like rising oil prices, more people leaving their homes, and more tension worldwide.
Some smaller countries are also trying to help. Qatar, Turkey, and Oman have tried sending messages between Iran and Israel. They are offering to act like middlemen, people who carry messages between two sides that refuse to talk directly. But right now, emotions are high, trust is very low, and both sides are angry. That means it's hard for peace efforts to work. Still, these countries are trying. They believe that even small talks, even quiet ones, could stop the violence from spreading further and hurting more people.
So, in this fight, the US is the biggest voice supporting Israel, but even they don't want the war to grow. China and Europe want peace. The UN wants both sides to stop. But the situation is still unstable. Everyone is watching, talking, and hoping, but no one has been able to stop the conflict yet. And the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to control. It's a moment where global attention is fully focused, but solutions are still far away.
And for people like us who just want to understand what's really going on, it's clear that this is not just a local issue, it's a global one. What happens between Iran and Israel doesn't stay between them. It affects fuel prices, travel safety, political talks, and even peace in other parts of the world. That's why countries from every continent are now paying attention. They know that even if the missiles stop tomorrow, the tension will still be there, and that's something the whole world has to think about.
When we hear about war, we often think about missiles, jets, and politics. But behind all of that, it's the ordinary people who suffer the most. In Israel, families are living in fear every day. When sirens go off, people only have a few seconds to run and hide in bomb shelters. Parents grab their children and rush down to basements or safe rooms. People are scared to leave their homes. Schools are closed. Shops stay shut. It's hard to live a normal life when you don't know if a missile might fall at any moment. The fear never really leaves.
And in Iran, the situation is also very difficult. After the bombings in cities like Tehran, Isfahan, and Shiraz, many people have started leaving the cities. They're moving to smaller towns or villages, hoping to stay away from danger. Roads are crowded with families carrying bags, blankets, and whatever they can take. Hospitals are full, not just with people who are hurt, but also with those feeling afraid or anxious. Electricity and water are getting cut in some areas. Imagine living with no light, no clean water, and the sound of explosions in the background.
What makes it even worse is that places meant for safety, like schools, hospitals, and homes, are also being damaged. In one Israeli city, a hospital was hit by a missile. That's a place where doctors try to save lives, not lose them. And in Iran, several apartment buildings were destroyed in the recent airstrikes. These buildings weren't part of the military. They were just homes. Now children have no bedrooms, parents have no kitchens, and elderly people are sleeping outside. War doesn't just hit soldiers. It breaks families apart. It changes daily life in the worst way.
Yes, and the mental pressure is very high. Children in both countries are asking, why is this happening? Many can't sleep at night, loud sounds make them cry. In schools, if they're open at all, teachers have to calm students who are afraid all the time. And adults are stressed too. They're worried about food, money, safety, and the future. Many people are losing jobs because businesses are closing. And when there's no income and no peace, people feel hopeless. They feel stuck in a life full of fear and no answers.
What we often forget is that most people in Israel and Iran are not part of the government or military. They are regular people. They just want to work, study, raise their families, and live in peace. But when leaders go to war, it's the people who pay the price. They lose their homes, their jobs, and sometimes their loved ones. They watch their cities burn and their futures disappear. And the worst part? They didn't choose this. Most of them don't even fully understand why it's happening. They're just caught in the middle.
And that's what makes war so painful. It doesn't solve problems for normal people, it creates more. A child in Tehran or Tel Aviv doesn't care about politics. They care about having food, a bed, and safety. But now they're growing up in fear. They're learning the sound of sirens instead of songs. And every day they ask questions their parents can't answer. This is the true cost of war. Not the bombs, not the money, but the damage to people's lives and minds. These are things that don't heal easily.
In times like these, what people really need is peace. They need leaders to stop shouting and start listening. They need safety, not sirens. They need normal days, not emergency nights. But right now that feels far away. And until then, people will keep suffering. They'll keep running, hiding, and praying that tomorrow will be better. That's the reality on both sides, whether you're in Iran or in Israel. War doesn't choose sides when it comes to pain. It just leaves it behind everywhere it goes.
So while leaders make big speeches and give orders, real people are just trying to survive. A mother holding her child during an air raid, a father searching for food during a blackout, a teacher wondering if her school will still be standing next week. These are the voices we don't hear in the news, but they matter the most, because in the end, war is not just about borders or bombs, it's about people, and they are the ones who need peace more than anyone else.
Finally, let's talk about the most difficult part. What might happen next? Right now, things are still very tense. If Iran keeps attacking, Israel will likely respond again, and not just with small airstrikes. It could become something much bigger. Israel has already said they will not stay quiet. If more missiles come their way, they will hit back with full force. That could mean more cities being bombed, more people in danger, and more fear in the region. The scary thing is, both countries feel they're defending themselves, so neither side wants to stop first.
And if the situation gets worse, there's a chance that the United States could join the fight. The U.S. already has soldiers and military bases in nearby countries like Iraq, Syria, and the Persian Gulf. If Iran attacks those places, or if American soldiers are hurt, the U.S. might step in directly. And that's when things could become a larger Middle East war. Other countries might also get pulled in. Lebanon, Syria, and even countries in Europe could be affected. That's why world leaders are trying to stop this from growing. No one wants a regional war that spreads across borders.
But even with all these dangers, nobody truly wants war. Not the people. Not even most leaders. They all know what war brings: death, pain, and long-term damage. But sometimes leaders act out of pressure, fear, or pride. And when both sides believe they are doing the right thing, compromise becomes difficult. So yes, the future is uncertain. Will they stop? Will someone step in and make them talk? Or will the fighting continue and grow? Right now, we don't have the answers, but what we do know is that the danger is real and growing fast.
And for us, as learners and listeners, understanding this conflict clearly is important. It helps us see the world better. It teaches us that war is not just about two countries, it's about people, lives, and peace. In today's episode, we didn't just talk about politics, we talked about the pain that war causes. We broke it down in simple English so you can understand not only the facts, but also the feelings behind them. And we hope this helps you speak about this topic in English with more confidence and clarity.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode on Speak Up. We know this was a serious topic, but it's an important one. We hope this helped you learn more, not just about Iran and Israel, but also how to talk about real global issues in clear, natural English.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone, whether you're a new listener or someone who joins us every week. Your support means a lot. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep speaking up.
And remember, every topic you understand brings you one step closer to fluency. If you found this episode helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to Speak Up on YouTube or your favorite podcast app.
We'll be back soon with another powerful and useful episode. Until then, stay safe, stay curious, and don't stop learning.